We are dealing with a serious infant formula shortage in this country, where parents, many of whom are struggling, are now scrambling to find the formula to feed their babies. This should not happen in the wealthiest nation in the world.
This has become a dangerous and unacceptable situation. This administration appears interested in alleviating the issue, but it's taking too long to get to this point. We must ensure the shortage is fixed immediately.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle grilling the FDA commissioner in a hearing last week over the nationwide baby formula shortage. Here to discuss that and much more, ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran, Caitlin Dickerson from The Atlantic, ABC News contributor and Dispatch staff writer Sarah Isgur, and Democratic strategist and former Obama deputy campaign manager Stephanie Cutter. Welcome to all of you this morning. And Sarah, I want to start with you where Rick Klein kind of left off. Some of the GOP candidates who won Tuesday, election deniers like Pennsylvania gubernatorial candidate Doug Mastriano, Republican donors and lobbyists are quietly saying this could be a disaster in the general.
Well, it reminds me a little of Todd Akin in 2012, but it reminds me of that for a few reasons. Remember that Claire McCaskill bragged about spending $1.7 million to ensure that Todd Akin would be her opponent on the Republican side. She went on to win that election. But it was a heck of a gamble to take with our democracy. Similarly here, Democrats spent twice as much on TV to help Doug Mastriano win that primary than Doug Mastriano raised or spent on TV. They sent out flyers. So for Democrats to say that he's a threat to democracy, either they don't believe it or they're willing to play with our democracy just to win elections. I found it deeply troubling. Of course, Republicans are the ones who voted for him in the end. But Democrats are playing fast and loose if they think that Doug Mastriano can't win in an election year like this with Biden's approval numbers where they are.
And that's pretty much exactly what Joe Biden said. He said those candidates, no matter who comes out of this, the Republicans are just extreme. She got a point?
So we're going to blame Democrats for Republican extremism? No, I think that in any election, you want to run against the person that you think you can beat. Most analysis in Pennsylvania don't believe that any money spent on the Democratic side had anything to do with Mastriano's victory. Now that there is a victory on the Republican side, then now the race is clear. And we're seeing similar things in races across the country, and we may very well see it on Tuesday in Georgia.
And how about in the Senate race in Pennsylvania? We don't know the outcome there yet.
We don't know the outcome. Both are, both Republicans think of themselves as MAGA Republicans. One got the Trump endorsement, the other didn't. And I think that the fact that this race is so tight is a testament to what does Trump's endorsement really mean in Pennsylvania, which is a good sign for mainstream Republicans, to the extent there aren't any, but also independents in terms of Democrats winning in that state. Fetterman, who won the Democratic nomination, really racked up votes in rural areas and all across that state. And it's a testament to someone who is well known for being a man of the people, a working class elected official who, takes care of, the people who get up and put on their boots every day.
Despite suffering a stroke himself.
Right.
Terry, I want to go back to the Pennsylvania governor's race, though, as we said. An election denier, but if he wins in November, he would appoint the Secretary of State. Does his win, in your eyes, strengthen the likelihood of a Donald Trump run in 2024, since that is a key battleground state?
I think the determinant of Donald Trump running for president again is where Joe Biden is, so I think he's obviously pointing in that direction. But yes, if he's got his own lieutenants, people who are not just believers in his 2020 lie, but who want to reshape our electoral process so that it's controlled by them. So the other side really can't win. He wants to, obviously, Pennsylvania.
Explain how that works.
Well, Pennsylvania is one of 3 states where the governor gets to appoint the Secretary of State, who is the lead election official. But he also wants to take and make sure that legislatures can. He wants to decertify the voting machines in all kinds of Democratic counties because he believes the lie, which was checked by court after court after court in Pennsylvania, that the voting machines are gremlins in the voting machine that stole 80,000 votes from Donald Trump. It's garbage. But that is part of his platform. And the outrage about it doesn't count on what Donald Trump has done to the Republican Party, which is there's a significant number of Republicans, I believe, who don't want the other side to win ever again.
But aren't speaking out too loudly. And Caitlin, Trump's endorsements were kind of a mixed bag this week. How do you view his influence on what happened this week and next week?
I think what we're seeing is that a Trump endorsement is just that. It's a boost, but it's not a clincher. I mean, look at the gubernatorial race in Georgia, you know, for example, where the incumbent, Kemp, has succeeded, you know, despite the fact that Trump is backing his challenger, Perdue. And that's because, you know, one might think this is a sort of a personal battle between Kemp and Trump that's playing out. Trump is still mad at Kemp for not having overturned the 2020 election results there. But Kemp is saying, look at my record, you know, and he has this strong record that speaks to important issues to Republican voters. He's signed into law legislation that makes it easier to carry a gun if you don't have a permit, you know, bans on abortion pills that can be put in the mail. You know, he was one of the first governors in the country to roll back COVID-19 protocols there. And so I think voters there, and another key, I think, important factor, right, is Stacey Abrams. Kemp has already run successfully for governor against Stacey Abrams, and she is this very popular Democratic candidate. You know, she has a very strategic ground game. She has national support. And so I think that's voters saying, you know, we don't want to take a flyer on a new candidate just because former President Trump supports him.
Sarah, your take on all of this, and when you look at Trump and when you look at the Brian Kemp and the governor's race down in Georgia.
Look, from a political science perspective, you'd want all these primaries to be on the same day so that you could actually compare and contrast. But here's what we have. In Ohio, Trump's endorsed candidate was in second, maybe third place. Trump's endorsement rockets him to first, and he wins by quite a bit. It was clearly a win for Donald Trump. I think you could see other things in the race happening. The non-Trump candidate also moved up 10 points after Trump's endorsement of J.D. Vance, obviously lost, but still dynamics happening in Ohio that moved around Trump's endorsement as that race consolidated. In Pennsylvania, the two candidates have tied. We're going into a recount there. And Donald Trump's endorsement for someone with that high of name ID, where you had other Republican officials endorsing someone else, seemed to cancel itself out a little bit. And then in Georgia, of course, two statewide elected officials running against each other, Donald Trump's endorsement seeming to make no difference. And so I think, again, when you look at what that will mean overall for Donald Trump is going to have a good year in 2022, but his endorsement alone, not enough, and no candidate has been able to prove that they can capture the Donald Trump energy themselves either by being more Donald Trump. That has still, since 2016, never happened.
And Stephanie, President Biden, okay, those approval ratings way down in the toilet, 39% in the latest AP NORC poll. Does his endorsement help or hurt? He's got a candidate in Oregon who he's endorsed, probably going to lose.
Look, when you're the president of the United States, whatever is going great in the country, maybe you get credit. But whatever is going badly in the country, you absolutely get the blame. And inflation is high. People are just generally exhausted by crisis after crisis after crisis. And there's very little, you know, the president has put forward an agenda to deal with inflation. We saw how quickly he worked on the infant formula crisis. He's handling Ukraine, pulling the world together, and rebuilding alliances against authoritarian governments like Putin. You know, by any metric, with the exception of inflation, this country has moved forward under his leadership.
But gas prices and inflation, that's a big metric.
It is a big metric, absolutely. And, you know, I think the key now for Democrats over the last 6 months or so of this election, we have to see whether or not the candidates and campaigns matter. I think that they do. And you see House Democrats, who are probably more vulnerable to the president's approval rating, really trying to put an agenda forward, get things done, and highlight the difference with Republicans, who are really not just standing in the way, but banning books, and they want to ban abortion, and they want to roll back constitutional rights. They want to raise taxes on the middle class. All of these things drive a very sharp contrast in terms of which direction the country is going to go in. And if Democrats can make that contrast stick over the next 6 months, it will matter. I'm not sugarcoating where Democrats are. This is, you know, there are historical headwinds against them, and there are also inflation metrics that, you know, unfortunately governments can do very little about. But if there is anything to do, this president is focused on it.
And Terry, I want to move to the infant formula. The military to the rescue once again. The White House said they'd been working on this for months and months, but it didn't appear that way since we got to such a crisis point.
It sure doesn't. And the baby formula issue is shocking to Americans. It's shocking. The political ramifications of it are profound. This can't be our country, where babies are at risk of dying. I mean, if this goes on for a few more weeks, it's possible we're going to lose someone in this country because of this. The Biden administration knew about it in February. Whatever came afterwards, whatever the investigations determined, the buck stops in the Oval Office. I don't know why somebody at the FDA didn't call up the chief of staff and say, you know, we had to shut down this baby formula plant. And because of the nature of the American economy and major American corporations, where there just is no wiggle room at all, because efficiency, maximizing profits, you take one piece out and the system collapses.
That's the extraordinary thing about all this. Caitlin, this does survive as a political issue for sure. It was dangerous, as Terry said. Parents are not going to forget that. How serious in terms of political fallout do you see it?
I think right now it comes down to time, right? As you know, for parents of newborn babies, every second of every minute of every hour counts. It's such a vulnerable time, particularly for parents who have children who have potentially life-threatening food allergies, which means they can only consume certain formula. Parents who have to rely on public benefits in order to feed their children. And so, right, as Terry said, I mean, they're feeling right now as if this is, you know, too late, certainly, and it really is going to come down to how much of a concrete impact does this ultimately have? Because there are two questions here. It's you know, the concrete danger to babies who need formula, and then it's the emotional toll on the parents who aren't going to forget about this. And I think one of the biggest sort of complaints about the Trump administration was that it was chaotic. It wasn't organized. And so things weren't taken care of. You know, things were forgotten because there was so much focus in one direction or another. Well, this looks like disorganization. It looks like something that's incredibly important that was missed.
But Sarah, I think in months to come, not only are they going to think about that, but to Stephanie's point, the economy, inflation, that seems like what Republicans will be pounding on.
Yeah, you look at focus groups that are being held right now with, for instance, Republican primary voters, and when you ask them about the economy, about anything, really, what it comes back to is things were better under Donald Trump. We don't really know why. We don't really remember maybe viscerally what it was like to have him on Twitter, but this is clearly worse. And look, to just have one moment on the baby formula issue, not only has the Biden administration, I think, clearly dropped the ball since they knew about this, even before, right? The FDA had a whistleblower long before, shut down the plant in February, but, and I want to broaden this out so that it's not just Joe Biden's fault. We have 17.5% tariffs on outside baby formula coming in from outside the United States. We have government-given monopolies where 2/3 of the states have a granted monopoly to Abbott. So when they shut down, 2/3 of the states then weren't going to be able to get their baby formula. This was a problem that had been simmering for a long time that nobody did anything about. And so for the Biden administration now to claim that they're doing everything they can in the last 2 weeks, that's not going to be enough. There's far more that can be done. And just as a new mom myself who had a baby on specialty formula, I mean, it's outrageous to me that this is happening in this country right now. And so politically, I think it will have a huge impact. I think inflation, you're right, will always be a bigger impact because it's every time you go to the gas station. It's every time you go to the grocery store. And baby formula not on the shelves is just one more thing to incompetence, to chaos that makes it not seem that different from the Trump administration.
And one more thing, Terry Moran, Title 42. Not just one more thing. A Louisiana judge extended a temporary block in the administration's plan to lift restrictions on asylum seekers due to COVID, something Donald Trump put in place. What happens now, and are Democrats actually kind of happy this happened?
They are, because both the courts and the Biden administration are trying to keep their finger in the dike, because we are going to see a gigantic surge of migrants across a border which has become so disorderly and so insanely managed through a hodgepodge of policies and stopgap operations and anger in some ways that it doesn't work. And the one thing Americans of both parties want, I think, almost all of them, is an orderly, sensible border. Just not this humanitarian catastrophe, not this, we don't know who's coming into the country, and the use of it by migrants who know the holes in it and are going to surge to that border. So yes, the Biden administration and Democrats are happy that that border will remain sealed using a law that probably wasn't meant to do that because they don't know what to do when it goes.
And it doesn't end the controversy and the problem. We've already seen record numbers. People keep flooding that border,
Right.
Stephanie.
Right. It's not just a political problem, it's a national problem that has existed for a very long time. And the only way to really deal with it is immigration reform. But unfortunately, we're so stuck in our positions, it's hard to have a real conversation on immigration reform in this Congress. And you know, you see Republicans running ads even this week after the Buffalo shooting, Elise Stefanik running ads basically with replacement theory messaging about immigrants. That does not help bring us together for comprehensive immigration reform. That's the only way we're going to be able to deal with this. Like, nobody is for open borders. Nobody is for, you know, tens of thousands of immigrants risking their lives to get to this country. We need immigration reform so that we can work here and in those countries to do this in an orderly way, but also a humanitarian way.
And can I just add to...
We have 10 seconds. Go ahead.
To Stephanie's point that it is what's happening at the border. We're using a pandemic rule as a border policy. The reason that you have backups at the border is because there is one pathway for people coming from Mexico and Central America, and it's through the asylum system, which is incredibly backlogged. That's on Congress.
Incredibly backlogged is right.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.